I'm standing at a Bangkok ATM at 3 in the morning, trying my card for the 5th time, and the screen keeps showing the same message. Insufficient funds. Transaction declined. My hands are shaking as I try my backup card. Same message. I try the joint account card I share with my wife, the wife I left 3 months ago to be with Pim. Declined. I pull out my phone to check my banking app, but my login credentials don't work. I try calling my bank's international helpline, and after 15 minutes on hold, a customer service representative tells me what I'm terrified to hear. Sir, your accounts show multiple large withdrawals over the past week. Your checking account balance is $47. Your savings account is empty. Your joint account has been closed by the other account holder. $75,000. Gone. Every penny I had saved over 30 years of working as an electrical engineer, the money from selling my car, the funds I'd emptied from joint accounts before my wife could stop me. All of it vanished in less than a week, while I was sleeping next to the woman who was systematically destroying my life. I walk back to the apartment where Pim and I have been living for the past 2 months. My legs feel like they're moving through water. When I unlock the door and step inside, I already know what I'm going to find, but the reality still hits me like a physical blow. The apartment is empty. Pim's clothes are gone from the closet. Her toiletries have been cleared from the bathroom. The laptop she used is missing. The jewelry I bought her has vanished. Even the damn coffee maker I purchased last week is gone. On the kitchen counter, there's a single piece of paper. It's the lease agreement for this apartment, the apartment Pim told me we were renting together. The apartment I'd paid 3 months rent for up front. I look at the dates on the lease, and my stomach drops. The lease expired yesterday. We were never supposed to be here beyond yesterday. Pim knew exactly when we needed to be out, and she timed her disappearance perfectly. I try calling her phone. Disconnected. I check Facebook. Her account has been deleted. Line, WhatsApp, Instagram, all gone. Every method of contacting her has been systematically eliminated. I sink down onto the floor of the empty apartment, my back against the wall, and the full weight of what I've done crashes over me. I left my wife Karen after 25 years of marriage. I abandoned my 2 children, Matt and Sarah, who begged me not to do this. I emptied our savings accounts and sold assets we'd built together. I flew to Thailand convinced I was starting a new life with my soulmate. And now I'm sitting in an empty Bangkok apartment with $47 to my name, no way to access more money, and the crushing knowledge that the woman I loved, the woman I destroyed my family for, was scamming me from the very first message she sent. My name is Robert Miller. Everyone calls me Rob. I'm 56 years old, and over the past 10 months, I made the worst decisions of my life. I left everything that mattered to chase a fantasy created by a professional scammer who understood exactly how to manipulate a middle-aged man having a midlife crisis. And now, I've lost everything. My marriage, my children, my savings, my dignity, and any chance of getting back what I threw away. This is the story of how Pimchanak Thanasiri destroyed my life, and how I let her do it because I was too desperate to feel desired again, to recognize obvious manipulation. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. To understand how I ended up destroying my family for a scammer I'd never met in person, you need to understand who I was before Pim entered my life. A 55-year-old electrical engineer stuck in a marriage that had become more obligation than partnership, desperately craving to feel seen and desired again. I was born in Dallas in 1968, grew up in a middle-class suburban family where men worked steady jobs and built stable lives. I was good at math and science, so I studied electrical engineering at the University of Texas and graduated in 1990 with solid prospects. I met my wife Karen in 1992 when I was 24. She was a school teacher, practical and steady, and we built what looked from the outside like a successful middle-class American life. We married in 1995, bought a house in a decent Dallas suburb in 1998, and had 2 children, Matt in 1999 and Sarah in 2002. For about 15 years, our marriage was solid enough. We weren't passionate or romantic, but we were functional partners, raising kids and managing a household. I worked as an electrical engineer for a defense contractor, progressing steadily through the ranks. Karen taught elementary school. We attended parent-teacher conferences, coached youth sports, took annual vacations to Florida or California. But somewhere around 2015, when I was in my late 40s and the kids were teenagers, the marriage started feeling empty. Karen and I had become roommates managing logistics rather than romantic partners. Our conversations were about bills, schedules, the kids' activities, home maintenance, never about us, never about feelings or desires or dreams. The physical intimacy was gone too. We'd have sex maybe once every few months, mechanical and joyless, more about maintaining the appearance of marriage than actual desire. I felt invisible to Karen, just another household responsibility she managed efficiently but without any real passion or interest. I tried talking to Karen about how disconnected I felt, but she dismissed my concerns. "This is what marriage becomes after 25 years, she'd say. "Nobody stays in love forever. We have a good life, healthy kids, financial security. What more do you want?" What I wanted was to feel like I mattered to someone, to feel desired rather than just tolerated, to believe life wasn't just an extended countdown to retirement and death. I was 54 years old, my kids were grown and preparing to leave home, and I was looking at another 20 or 30 years of this empty existence with a woman who saw me as a functional partner but not as someone she actually wanted. I know this sounds like classic midlife crisis bullshit. I know millions of men feel this way and don't destroy their families over it. But understanding how vulnerable I was emotionally helps explain how someone like Pim could manipulate me so completely. In late 2022, I started spending more time online in my home office after work, ostensibly working on projects, but actually just avoiding going downstairs to sit silently with Karen watching television shows neither of us cared about. I browsed social media, watched YouTube videos, fell into rabbit holes about travel and adventure and places where life seemed more vibrant than suburban Dallas. I became particularly fascinated with videos about Thailand. Expatriates posted about living there affordably, beautiful beaches and temples, friendly people, and yes, relationships with Thai women who supposedly valued older Western men. The content was seductive, showing men my age who had escaped boring Western marriages and found younger women who treated them with apparent affection and respect. I knew intellectually that these relationships were probably transactional younger Thai women seeking financial security from older foreign men. But the emotional part of me wanted desperately to believe that someone could desire me, that I wasn't just permanently invisible to women, that maybe in a different culture I could feel valued again. In January 2023, I joined several Facebook groups about Thailand travel and expatriate life. I commented on posts about the best places to visit, where to stay, what to expect. I started fantasizing about taking a vacation there, maybe alone, maybe as a trial separation from Karen, maybe as the beginning of a completely different life. On February 14th, 2023 Valentine's Day, ironically, I received a Facebook friend request and a private message from a Thai woman named Pimchanak Thanasiri. The message was friendly and flattering. "Hello, Rob. I saw your comments in the Thailand travel group and you seem like such an interesting person with wonderful energy. I am Pim, from Bangkok. I own a small boutique shop here and I love meeting people from around the world. Your perspective on our country is so respectful and thoughtful. I hope we can be friends." I looked at Pim's Facebook profile. Her photos showed an attractive woman in her early 30s with a bright smile, stylish clothes, and an apparently successful small business. Her posts were about her boutique, her life in Bangkok, cultural events she attended. She didn't appear to be a bar girl or someone obviously seeking foreign men, just a normal Thai businesswoman. I accepted her friend request and thanked her for the message. We began exchanging messages daily, casual conversations about my work as an engineer, her boutique business, cultural differences between America and Thailand, our respective lives and backgrounds. Pim was charming and attentive, always asking thoughtful questions, and making me feel like she was genuinely interested in my thoughts and experiences. After 2 weeks of daily messaging, Pim said something that made my heart race. "Rob, I must tell you something from my heart. I feel a very special connection with you. You have a beautiful soul, and I think we may have known each other in a past life. I know this might sound strange, but I believe you are my soulmate from another time." Her words hit me with devastating force. After years of feeling invisible to Karen, here was a beautiful younger woman telling me I was special, that she felt a deep connection, that I had a beautiful soul. I wanted to believe it so badly that I ignored every rational warning signal. I feel the connection too, I wrote back. I can't explain it, but talking to you makes me feel alive in ways I haven't felt in years. Over the next several weeks, our messages became increasingly romantic. Pim would send me photos, selfies with messages saying she was thinking of me, pictures of Bangkok with captions about wishing I was there to experience it with her. She started calling me my darling Rob and my soulmate. She would send voice messages telling me how much she missed me, even though we'd never met. I was completely intoxicated by the attention. For the first time in decades, a woman was making me feel desired, valued, important. Every message from Pim made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just invisible background noise in someone else's life. By April 2023, about 2 months after Pim first contacted me, we were having video calls several times a week. Seeing her face and hearing her voice made everything feel more real. Pim was warm and affectionate during these calls, talking about our future together, asking when I could visit Thailand, telling me she was falling in love with me. I have been in relationships with Thai men who treated me badly. Pim told me during one video call, tears in her eyes. They were unfaithful. They didn't value me. They saw me only as property. But you are different, Rob. You have a good heart. You treat women with respect. I feel safe with you in ways I have never felt before. I felt like a hero, the good man who would rescue this beautiful, successful woman from her past pain and give her the love she deserved. The narrative was intoxicating, and it filled a void in my sense of self that had been empty for years. I had just made the first step toward destroying my family, though I didn't recognize it yet. I had allowed someone I'd known for 2 months online to make me feel more valued than my wife of 25 years, and I was already emotionally leaving my marriage even before the physical departure would come. By May 2023, I was spending hours every day messaging and video calling with Pim. I would come home from work, eat a quick dinner with Karen while barely speaking, then retreat to my home office to talk with Pim until midnight or later. Karen noticed the change but didn't confront me directly, just occasional comments about me working late or being distant. My relationship with Pim was escalating emotionally in ways that made my marriage feel even more hollow by comparison. Pim would send me messages throughout the day. Good morning, my darling. Thinking of you right now. I wish I could kiss you. The constant attention made me feel alive and desired in ways I hadn't experienced since my 20s. In early June, Pim introduced the first financial request, and she did it skillfully. During a video call, she seemed distressed, and when I asked what was wrong, she hesitated before explaining. I am having problems with my boutique business, she said, visibly upset. COVID-19 hurt tourism very badly in Thailand, and I have debts from that time when almost no customers came for 2 years. I have been working so hard to rebuild, but I owe money to suppliers and they are threatening to stop providing merchandise if I cannot pay them soon. I might lose my business. She started crying, and I felt desperate to comfort her. How much do you owe? I asked. Too much, Pim said, shaking her head. About 250,000 baht, maybe $8,000 in your currency. I have been trying to pay it gradually, but the suppliers are not patient anymore. If I lose the business, I lose everything I have worked for. $8,000. I had that in savings. It was money Karen and I had accumulated over years. Money we'd planned to use for home improvements or emergency expenses. But Karen didn't know exactly how much we had in savings. I managed the accounts. I can loan you the money, I said. You can pay me back when the business recovers. I don't want you to lose everything you've worked for. Pim's reaction was overwhelming gratitude and relief. Rob, I cannot ask you to do this. We have not even met in person. This is too much. You're not asking, I'm offering, I insisted. We're going to be together, right? What's mine will be yours eventually. Let me help you now when you need it. Over the next week, I transferred $8,000 from our savings account to a Thai bank account Pim provided. She sent me photos of herself at the bank receiving the money, crying with relief and gratitude. She sent me receipts, supposedly showing payments to suppliers. She told me I had saved her business and her life. What I didn't know was that Pim didn't own a boutique. The business crisis was complete fiction. The $8,000 went directly into accounts controlled by her and her network. The receipts were forgeries, but I believed every word because I was so desperate to be her hero. The financial requests continued over the summer. In July, Pim told me she'd found a small condo for sale in Bangkok, a one-bedroom place that would be perfect for us when I visited Thailand. The price was 450,000 baht, about $15,000. If I could help her buy it, we'd have our own place to live together rather than hotels or rentals. I have some savings, but not enough, Pim explained. If you could help with the purchase, we would own it together. It would be our first home, a place that belongs to both of us. $15,000 was a substantial amount, but I had it in my 401k that I could withdraw with penalties. And the logic seemed sound. If Pim and I were going to build a life together, we needed a place to live. Buying property in Bangkok was cheaper than in America, and having our own condo would be an investment in our shared future. I withdrew $15,000 from my retirement account, paid the early withdrawal penalties and taxes, and sent the remaining amount to Pim. She sent me photos of herself at a real estate office, documents supposedly confirming the purchase, all in Thai, which I couldn't read, and videos of her touring the condo. She told me she was decorating it for us, making it beautiful for when I finally came to Thailand. The condo, like the boutique, didn't exist. The documents were forgeries. The real estate office was a setting where her network took convincing photographs, and the $15,000 was stolen as thoroughly as the previous $8,000. By August, I had sent Pim $23,000. My savings were declining noticeably, and Karen was starting to ask questions about where money was going. I told her I'd made some bad investments, that the market was down, that we'd recover the losses eventually. In September, Pim introduced the largest financial request yet. She told me her mother had been diagnosed with cancer and needed surgery urgently. The surgery cost 600,000 baht, about $20,000. Her family didn't have the money, and without the surgery, her mother would die. I am so scared, Rob, Pim sobbed during a video call. My mother is everything to me. She raised me alone after my father died. She worked so hard to send me to university. Now she is sick, and I cannot help her. I have borrowed from everyone I can, but it is not enough. She showed me what appeared to be hospital documents and doctor's reports, all in Thai, all official looking with medical terminology and clinic letterheads. She had video calls with an older Thai woman lying in what looked like a hospital bed, thanking me in broken English for helping her daughter. I felt sick with guilt and desperation. How could I not help when Pim's mother was dying? What kind of monster would I be to let someone die because I was worried about money? Pim had supported me emotionally for months, making me feel valued and loved when my own wife made me feel invisible. Now she needed me, and I had the ability to help. I sold my truck, a nice Ford F-150 I'd had for 5 years, for $18,000. I took additional money from our savings and checking accounts. I transferred $20,000 to Thailand for Pim's mother's surgery. The mother didn't have cancer. The hospital documents were sophisticated forgeries. The woman in the hospital bed video call was an actress from Pim's network playing a role. The $20,000 disappeared into untraceable accounts. By October 2023, I had sent Pim approximately $43,000 over 5 months. My truck was gone, our savings were depleted, and Karen was demanding to know what was happening to our money. I was running out of ways to hide the financial hemorrhaging. That's when I made the decision that would destroy my family completely. I decided to leave Karen and move to Thailand to be with Pim. In early October, I told Karen I wanted a divorce. I didn't tell her about Pim initially. I just said I was unhappy in the marriage and wanted to separate. Karen was shocked and hurt, asking what had changed, what she'd done wrong, whether we could try counseling. I refused counseling. I was already emotionally gone, already planning my life with Pim, already viewing my marriage as an obstacle to my real happiness rather than a partnership worth preserving. There's someone else, isn't there? Karen asked during one of our painful conversations. I couldn't lie anymore. Yes, I met someone who makes me feel alive again, someone who values me and wants me. I'm sorry, Karen, but I can't spend the rest of my life feeling invisible and unwanted. Karen's face showed a mixture of rage and devastation. Who is she? How long has this been going on? Her name is Pim. She's from Thailand. We've been talking for 8 months. Thailand? Karen's voice was incredulous. You're leaving me for someone in Thailand? Someone you've never even met in person? I'm going to meet her, I said. I'm moving to Thailand to be with her. I've already looked into retirement visas and housing options. You're insane, Karen said flatly. This is obviously a scam. She's using you for money. Can't you see that? Her words made me defensive and angry. Not everyone is as cynical as you, Karen. Some people are capable of genuine love, Just because you stopped caring about me years ago doesn't mean no one else can. Over the next several weeks, Karen tried everything to convince me I was being scammed, showing me articles about romance fraud, statistics about foreign women targeting American men, warnings from other victims. She begged me to at least wait until after I'd visited Thailand and spent time with Pim before making permanent decisions about our marriage. But I was too far gone. I felt like Karen was just trying to prevent my happiness because she was bitter about the marriage ending. I was convinced Pim was genuine and that everyone warning me was either jealous or cynical. My children reacted even worse than Karen. Matt, who was 24 and working as an accountant, was furious. "Dad, you're being an idiot," he told me bluntly during a phone call. "This woman is obviously scamming you. You're going to destroy our family and lose all your money because you're having a midlife crisis." "You don't know Pim," I shot back. "You're judging based on stereotypes. She's a successful businesswoman, not some bar girl. She loves me for who I am." "She loves your wallet," Matt said. "Have you sent her money?" I hesitated too long before answering, and Matt heard the truth in my silence. "How much, Dad?" "That's none of your business," I said defensively. "Jesus Christ," Matt muttered. "You've been sending her money. This is textbook romance fraud. Please, Dad, talk to a therapist or a financial advisor before you destroy your life." I hung up on him, convinced he was just trying to undermine my happiness. My daughter, Sarah, who was 21 and in her final year of college, tried a different approach. She cried during our conversation, begging me not to leave the family. "Dad, even if Pim is real and genuine, why do you have to leave right now? Why can't you wait until I graduate in May? Why can't you give us time to process this instead of just abandoning us?" Her plea broke my heart, but I'd convinced myself I'd waited long enough, that I deserved happiness now rather than continuing to sacrifice for people who didn't appreciate me. "I've put my life on hold for 25 years, I told Sarah. "I need to do this for myself." "What about us?" Sarah asked. "Don't we matter to you anymore?" "Of course you matter," I said, "but you're adults now. You don't need me the same way you did when you were kids. You have your own lives. I need to live mine." By November 2023, the divorce proceedings had begun. Karen filed for divorce, citing abandonment and adultery. Because I'd emptied joint accounts and sold assets without her knowledge, the legal proceedings were complicated and hostile. Karen's lawyer argued I'd committed financial misconduct that should affect the settlement. I hired a cheap lawyer and agreed to an unfavorable settlement just to expedite the process. Karen got the house, most of the remaining assets, and primary claim on what was left of our retirement accounts. I walked away with about $32,000 money I'd hidden in a separate account that Karen didn't know about. In early December, I quit my job as an electrical engineer, forfeiting benefits and pension contributions I'd built up over decades. I sold or gave away most of my possessions. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes and personal items. I transferred the $32,000 to an account I could access internationally. On December 15th, 2023, I boarded a flight to Bangkok with $55,000 in accessible funds, the 32 from my hidden account plus 23 I'd borrowed against credit cards, 2 suitcases, and the absolute conviction that I was finally starting my real life with a woman who actually loved me. My last conversation with Matt before leaving was brief and cold. "I hope she's worth it, Dad," he said. "I hope when you realize you've been scammed and you've lost everything, you remember that we all tried to warn you." My last conversation with Sarah was heartbreaking. She sobbed on the phone, begging me one last time not to go. "Please, Daddy, please don't do this. I still need you. Even if you don't love Mom anymore, please don't leave us." But I went anyway, convinced I was doing the right thing. Convinced that my family just didn't understand what real passion felt like. Convinced that Pim was my soulmate and that everything would be worth it once we were finally together. When my plane landed in Bangkok on December 16th, I believed I was beginning the best chapter of my life. What I was actually doing was walking directly into the final phase of a long-con romance scam that would take everything I had left and leave me destroyed in ways I'm still trying to process. Pim met me at Bangkok airport with flowers, tears, and a sign that said, "Welcome home, my darling Rob." When she hugged me for the first time in person, I felt like every sacrifice had been worth it. She was as beautiful as her photos, warm and affectionate, and she made me feel like the most important person in the world. "I cannot believe you are finally here," she kept saying, crying with what seemed like genuine joy. I have dreamed of this moment for so many months. Now we can finally start our real life together. We took a taxi to what Pim called our condo, the one-bedroom apartment she'd supposedly purchased with the $15,000 I'd sent in July. The apartment was nice enough furnished, modestly but adequately, in a decent neighborhood in Bangkok. Pim had decorated it with photos of us together, photos she'd created by photoshopping our separate images, making it feel like a real home. For the first few weeks, living with Pim felt like paradise. She cooked for me, showed me around Bangkok, took me to temples and markets and restaurants. She was affectionate and attentive, making me feel desired in ways Karen never had. The physical intimacy was everything I'd craved for years, not just sex, but genuine physical affection, cuddling, hand-holding, all the romantic gestures that had disappeared from my marriage decades ago. I felt validated. Everyone who'd warned me about Pim had been wrong. This wasn't a scam, this was real love. I'd made the right decision leaving Karen, and eventually my kids would understand and forgive me once they saw how happy I was. During these first weeks, I spent money freely. I took Pim shopping for clothes and jewelry. I paid for expensive dinners at nice restaurants. I gave her cash for household expenses and personal needs. I was operating on the assumption that we were building a life together and that what was mine was hers. By early January, I'd spent about $15,000 beyond the initial transfer costs and setup expenses. I still had approximately $40,000 left, which seemed like plenty to support both of us comfortably for many months, while I figured out longer-term visa and work arrangements. But in mid-January, Pim's behavior started changing in subtle ways. She became less affectionate, more distracted. She would spend hours on her phone, sometimes leaving the apartment for calls she said were about her boutique business. When I asked to visit the boutique, she always had reasons why the timing wasn't good: renovations, supplier meetings, inventory being reorganized. She also started requesting money more frequently. Her mother needed follow-up medical treatment, the boutique had unexpected expenses, she needed to help her sister who was having financial problems. Each request was reasonable individually, and each came with elaborate explanations and supporting documentation I couldn't read. By late January, I'd sent or given Pim an additional $20,000 beyond what I'd spent on shared expenses. I was starting to feel anxious about how quickly my funds were depleting, but Pim reassured me that once her boutique business was fully recovered from COVID impacts, she'd be contributing financially, and I wouldn't need to support both of us. In early February, I discovered something that should have alarmed me but which I rationalized away. I wanted to transfer some money from my US account to my Thai account for living expenses, but when I logged into my banking, I saw that my account balances were lower than I expected. Someone had made several withdrawals I didn't recognize totaling about $8,000. When I asked Pim about it, she looked genuinely confused. "I do not understand banking," she said. "Maybe there are fees for international transfers? Or maybe your American bank has charges you did not know about." I called my bank and discovered that someone had accessed my account using my login credentials and had made transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. The bank's fraud department said the transfers appeared legitimate because they'd been made using correct credentials and had passed security verification questions. "Did you give anyone access to your online banking?" the fraud investigator asked me. I realized that Pim had access to my laptop, which automatically logged into my banking. She could have made transfers without me knowing if she'd watched me enter my credentials or checked my saved passwords. But confronting that possibility meant acknowledging she might be scamming me, and I wasn't ready to face that reality. "It must be identity theft," I told the bank. "Someone hacked my account." The bank said they'd investigate, but recovering transferred funds would be difficult. I changed all my passwords and told Pim we needed to be more careful about computer security. She seemed sympathetic and concerned, and I wanted desperately to believe she had nothing to do with the theft. By mid-February, I had approximately $12,000 left. Pim was aware of my declining funds because I'd mentioned being worried about money. Her response was to become more affectionate and reassuring, telling me not to worry, that her business would soon be profitable again, and she'd support us. But her behavior was also becoming stranger. She would leave the apartment for entire days, saying she was managing the boutique, but she'd return without any evidence of having worked no inventory, no business documents, no discussion of customers or sales. When I suggested visiting her at work, she became evasive or changed the subject. In late February, Pim told me she needed to visit her family in Chiang Mai for a week. Her mother was having complications from the cancer treatment and needed Pim's help. I offered to come with her, but Pim said her family's village was very remote and uncomfortable for foreigners, and she'd be busy caring for her mother anyway. Pim left on February 23rd. She sent me sweet messages for the first 2 days, photos of herself with her family, updates about her mother's condition. But on February 25th, the messages stopped. I tried calling her straight to voicemail. I tried messaging on every platform, no responses. By February 27th, I was seriously worried. Had something happened to Pim? Was her mother worse than she'd told me? Should I try to travel to Chiang Mai to find her? On February 28th, I went to the ATM to withdraw cash for living expenses. That's when I got the insufficient funds message that started this nightmare. My accounts were empty. Someone had systematically drained every dollar while Pim was supposedly in Chiang Mai. I rushed back to the apartment in a panic, and that's when I discovered the full scope of the devastation. The apartment was empty. Pim's possessions were gone. Even items I'd purchased, the television, the microwave, jewelry, anything of value, had been removed. On the kitchen counter was the lease agreement showing the rental had expired the previous day. Pim had timed her exit perfectly. She'd waited until she'd extracted every dollar I had, then disappeared with a week's head start before I'd discover the theft. The days following Pim's disappearance were the darkest of my life. I had $47, maxed out credit cards, an expired lease, no way to access more money, and no one to turn to for help. I was essentially homeless in a foreign country where I barely spoke the language. I tried everything to contact Pim. Her phone was disconnected. All her social media accounts had been deleted. The boutique she supposedly owned didn't exist. The address she'd given me was a vacant storefront. The condo she'd supposedly purchased was actually a short-term rental that had now expired. Even her family emergency had been fiction. There was no sick mother in Chiang Mai, no family crisis, just another lie to justify her exit strategy. I filed a police report with Bangkok authorities, but their response was not encouraging. This happens very often with foreign men and Thai women, the officer told me. You had relationship with Thai girlfriend, you gave her money voluntarily, now relationship is over, and you are upset about money you spent. This is not crime, this is relationship ending badly. I tried explaining that Pim had stolen my banking credentials and made unauthorized transfers, but proving that was nearly impossible. The transfers had been made using my own computer and my correct login information. I couldn't demonstrate that I hadn't authorized them without admitting I'd been careless enough to let someone access my accounts. I contacted the U.S. Embassy, hoping they could help me return to America. They were sympathetic but limited in what they could do. We can help you contact family members who might send you money for a flight home, a consular officer said, but we cannot provide funds directly. Do you have family or friends in America who could help? I thought about calling Matt or Sarah, but the shame was overwhelming. How could I call the children I'd abandoned and ask them to rescue me from the disaster I'd created? How could I admit they'd been right about everything? I thought about calling Karen, but she'd already changed her phone number and blocked my email after the divorce finalized. And even if I could reach her, why would she help the man who'd emptied their accounts and abandoned their family? With no other options, I checked into the cheapest guest house I could find, a place in an old Bangkok neighborhood that charged 250 baht per night, about $7. The room was tiny and filthy, with a thin mattress on the floor, no air conditioning, and a shared bathroom down the hall. I survived on instant noodles bought from 7-Eleven 10 baht packages that at least kept me from starving. I lost 15 pounds over 3 weeks, not from intentional dieting, but from simply not having enough money to eat adequately. I spent my days trying to figure out how to get home. I couldn't afford a flight to America. The cheapest tickets were around 30,000 baht, and I had maybe 3,000 baht to my name. I tried contacting humanitarian organizations, but most couldn't help foreign nationals with repatriation unless there were extraordinary circumstances. The psychological impact was worse than the physical deprivation. I would lie awake at night in that filthy guest house room, replaying every decision that had led to this moment. I'd destroyed a 25-year marriage. I'd abandoned my children. I'd quit a stable job with benefits and pension. I'd sent a scammer $75,000 over 10 months. I'd left my family for a woman who'd been systematically destroying me from the first message she sent. The shame was crushing. Matt and Sarah had warned me. Karen had begged me to reconsider. Coworkers and friends had expressed concern. Everyone had seen what I'd refused to see because I was so desperate to feel desired again. I'd traded everything real for a fantasy, and now I had nothing. No money, no family, no home, no way forward. I was 56 years old, stranded in Bangkok with $7 to my name and the knowledge that I'd destroyed my life through sheer stupidity and desperate vanity. In mid-March, about 2 weeks after discovering Pim's theft, I hit true rock bottom. I'd run out of money entirely. I couldn't pay for another night at the guest house. I was facing the very real possibility of sleeping on the streets of Bangkok, homeless in a foreign country at 56 years old. That's when a small miracle occurred. The guest house owner, an older Thai woman who'd seen my situation deteriorating, told me about a local church that helped distressed foreigners. She called them on my behalf and explained my situation. A representative from the church, an American missionary named David who'd been living in Thailand for 20 years, came to meet me at the guest house the next day. I told him everything, admitting the full scope of my foolishness and the disaster I'd created. David listened without judgment, then said something I'll never forget. "You're not the first person who's been scammed this way, and you won't be the last. What matters now is getting you home safely so you can start rebuilding." The church agreed to loan me money for a flight back to Dallas, about 35,000 baht, roughly $1,000, with the understanding that I'd repay them when I was financially stable. They also gave me a little cash for food until my flight in 3 days. On March 21st, 2024, I boarded a flight back to Dallas. I'd been in Thailand for 3 months. I'd spent or lost approximately $75,000. I'd destroyed my marriage, damaged my relationships with my children beyond repair, quit my job, and sold most of my possessions. And I had nothing to show for any of it except the crushing knowledge that I'd been comprehensively scammed by someone who'd understood exactly how to manipulate a lonely, middle-aged man having a crisis. I'm 56 years old now, back in Dallas, living in a cheap studio apartment and working part-time doing electrical contract work when I can find it. I have no savings, substantial debt from the credit cards I maxed out and haven't been able to pay, and a financial future that looks bleak compared to the comfortable retirement I'd been building before I destroyed everything. But the financial consequences, while severe, are not the worst damage I'm living with. The worst damage is what I did to my family damage that may be permanent and irreparable. Karen wants nothing to do with me. She's moved on with her life, bought a smaller house with her portion of our divorce settlement, and from what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, she's actually happy now. The divorce freed her from a marriage I'd checked out of emotionally years ago, and she's building a life that doesn't include or need me. My relationship with my children is destroyed in ways I don't know how to fix. Matt refuses to speak to me. When I tried calling him after returning from Thailand, he answered once to tell me bluntly, "You made your choice, Dad. You chose a scammer over your family. I hope it was worth it. Don't contact me again." Sarah is slightly more forgiving, but deeply hurt. She agreed to meet me for coffee about 2 months after I returned. She spent most of the meeting crying and asking me questions I couldn't answer satisfactorily. "How could you leave us like that? How could you not see you were being scammed when everyone warned you? How could you throw away our family for someone you'd never even met?" I tried explaining about feeling invisible in my marriage, about Pim making me feel valued and desired, about being so desperate for connection that I ignored obvious warning signs. But my explanations sounded pathetic even to my own ears. I'd let vanity and midlife crisis destroy the most important relationships in my life. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Sarah told me. "Maybe eventually, but not now. You hurt me too much, Dad. You chose someone who didn't even exist over people who actually loved you. That kind of rejection doesn't just go away because you're sorry now. Financially, I'm barely surviving. The part-time electrical contract work pays enough to cover my cheap rent and basic living expenses, but I have no benefits, no retirement savings, no security. I'm paying minimum payments on credit card debt I'll probably never fully clear. I still owe the church in Bangkok about $800, which I send $20 toward each month when I can afford it. I've learned that Pim, or whoever she really was, has scammed multiple other foreign men using the same tactics. I found online forums where other victims shared their experiences, and the patterns were identical. Initial contact through travel, social media, rapid romantic escalation, claims about boutique business or family emergencies, systematic theft of funds, disappearance when the victim was financially exhausted. One American man lost $120,000. A British man lost £90,000. An Australian man lost his entire pension fund. The amounts varied, but the tactics were consistent. Identify lonely, middle-aged foreign men, make them feel desired and special, create elaborate fictions about businesses and family crises, extract every dollar possible, disappear completely. The police in Thailand have never located Pim or made any arrests. Pimchanak Thanasiri was probably not her real name. The boutique, the sick mother, the family in Chiang Mai, all fictions created to justify extracting money. Even the condo we lived in was just a short-term rental she'd paid for with my money, time to expire precisely when she planned to disappear. I spend time now in online forums, trying to warn other men who might be vulnerable to similar scams. I share my story in detail, explaining every manipulation tactic Pim used, hoping that maybe I can prevent someone else from destroying their life the way I destroyed mine. The response is mixed. Some men thank me for the warning and say my story helped them recognize red flags in their own online relationships. Others tell me my story prevented them from leaving their families for women they'd been messaging with online who were using identical tactics to what Pim used on me. But others react defensively, insisting their situations are different, their girlfriends are genuine. I'm just a cynical victim trying to ruin other people's happiness. They tell me not everyone who meets someone online is being scammed, that real relationships do form across borders and age gaps, that I'm projecting my bad experience onto their situations. I recognize that defensiveness. It's exactly how I reacted when Karen and my kids tried to warn me. When you're emotionally invested in believing someone cares about you, you'll rationalize away any evidence that contradicts that belief. You'll see warnings as jealousy or cynicism rather than genuine concern. You'll convince yourself that your situation is unique, that your connection is special, that the person who's telling you exactly what you want to hear is being genuine rather than manipulative. That's what makes these scams so effective. They don't target stupidity or naivety. They target loneliness and the human need for connection. They identify men who are vulnerable because of bad marriages, recent divorces, midlife crises, or just prolonged isolation. And then they provide exactly the emotional validation those men are desperate for, while systematically extracting money. The warning signs were obvious in retrospect. Pim contacted me initially, rather than me finding her. That's typical of scammers who target potential victims through their social media activity. She declared deep feelings, unusually quickly, calling me her soulmate within weeks of first contact. She requested money early in the relationship for supposedly legitimate but urgent needs. She always had elaborate explanations for financial requests, complete with supporting documentation I couldn't independently verify. She delayed meeting me in person for months while continuing to request money. When we did finally meet in person, she immediately gained access to my financial resources and systematically drained them. Every single element followed a documented pattern of romance fraud that I could have recognized if I'd been willing to look objectively at my situation. But I wasn't willing because I needed so desperately to believe Pim was genuine. The financial education I've gotten from studying romance fraud since returning to America is sobering. Romance scammers typically target victims for extended periods, often 6 months to 2 years before the victim discovers the fraud. They use sophisticated psychological manipulation, including mirroring, reflecting the victim's stated values and interests, love bombing, excessive early affection and attention, and strategic reinforcement, intermittent affection that keeps victims emotionally dependent. The most effective scammers, like Pim, build elaborate backgrounds that seem legitimate, businesses that supposedly exist, family situations that seem real, documentation that looks official. They'll spend months establishing trust before requesting significant money, understanding that investment of time makes victims more likely to provide large amounts. Pim invested 10 months in scamming me before I discovered the fraud. She'd carefully studied my psychology, understanding that I felt invisible in my marriage, that I was vulnerable to flattery and attention, that I was desperate to feel desired again. She'd crafted her approach specifically for my vulnerabilities, presenting herself as successful and independent rather than needy, requesting help for urgent situations rather than directly asking for gifts, making me feel like a hero solving her problems rather than a victim being robbed. The question people ask most often is whether I regret what I did. The answer is complex. I regret the execution. I wish I'd been smarter, less naive, more skeptical. I wish I'd listened to warnings instead of dismissing them as jealousy or cynicism. I wish I'd gone to Thailand to visit Pim before quitting my job and leaving my family, which would have revealed her scam before I'd destroyed everything. But do I regret wanting more from life than a dead marriage where I felt invisible? No. The midlife crisis feelings that made me vulnerable to Pim's manipulation were legitimate. My marriage was hollow. I was lonely and desperate for connection. I was facing decades more of empty existence. The mistake wasn't wanting something better. The mistake was believing I could find it through a woman I'd never met who was telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. The mistake was destroying real relationships with people who actually loved me imperfectly, maybe, but genuinely for a fantasy relationship created by a professional scammer. I didn't just lose money. I tell people when sharing my story, I lost my family, my dignity, and the people who truly loved me. That's what makes this the worst decision of my life. Not the $75,000 Pim stole, but the family I destroyed to give her the opportunity. If I could go back and do everything differently, I would. I would have addressed my unhappiness in my marriage through counseling instead of emotional affairs with strangers online. I would have taken a vacation to Thailand to meet Pim before making life-destroying decisions. I would have listened when my children begged me not to go. I would have recognized obvious scam patterns instead of rationalizing them away because I was desperate to believe someone desired me. But I can't go back. I can only live with the consequences of catastrophically bad judgment, try to rebuild some kind of life from the ruins, and hope that sharing my story prevents others from making similar mistakes. At 56, I'm starting over with nothing. No savings, no family, no security. I work part-time, live in a studio apartment in a rough Dallas neighborhood, eat cheap food, and spend my evenings alone wondering how I destroyed a 25-year marriage and a lifetime of family relationships for 2 months with a woman who never existed. That's the cruelest part of all. Pim was a fiction, a carefully constructed performance designed to extract maximum money from a vulnerable target. Every loving word, every affectionate gesture, every tear about her sick mother or struggling business was calculated manipulation. I didn't lose my family for a real relationship that failed. I lost my family for a scam, and that knowledge makes the shame almost unbearable. I left my wife and kids for a Thai scammer, and she took everything from me, not just $75,000, but my marriage, my children, my dignity, and any hope of the comfortable retirement I'd spent decades building. That's my story, and I share it as a warning. No matter how unhappy you are, no matter how much you crave connection and desire, destroying real relationships for online fantasies will cost you everything that actually matters. If this story has made you think twice about online romance and the cost of midlife crisis decisions, please subscribe to this channel. Rob Miller's experience shows the devastating consequences of choosing fantasy over reality and the permanent damage caused by destroying families for scammers. His story represents thousands of men who sacrifice genuine relationships for the illusion of passion and attention. Share this with anyone in a troubled marriage who might be vulnerable to online romance scams. And remember, feeling invisible in your marriage is a problem that needs counseling and communication, not escape to someone who's telling you exactly what you want to hear. Real love requires imperfect work with real people, not fantasy relationships with strangers who exist only online. Thank you for watching, and protect yourself and your family.